To the shock of some who thought the Russian Mafia as a phenomenon that emerged after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1990, the beginnings of Russian organized crime can be traced back to Imperial Russia. Since then, it has evolved into an autonomous organization with its own set of laws and customs, dedicated to perfecting the life lived under the shadow of the law, as well as morality and respect for others. So the Brotherhood of the Law of Thieves was formed, an inconspicuous organization that brought together all the thieves, criminals, robbers, and Russian crooks. Members of this actual union felt safe from police searches, highly organized, and well-trained for their infamous task. Even though it may appear unbelievable, the thieves in law operated actual vocational schools, where young people were trained step by step in the art of robbery, theft, deceit, and fraud, all leading to a specialty in tailored killings. Although the Russian word is frequently translated as thieves in law, a more accurate translation would be criminals professing the code. In the late 1920s or early 1930s, the fraternity was founded in Soviet labor camps. They adhered to rigid norms and a code of conduct as well as a set of shared ideas. They set up simple but efficient courts in which members who broke the code were judged and punished. A Vor, a full-fledged member of the Vor V Zakone criminal fraternity, would get his crown at a gathering when the fraternity's primary laws were presented. The prospective applicant was invited to participate in an initiation rite after a period of observation. The meeting admitted the novice into the society after a recommendation from a current member, and the new Vor swore an oath of acceptance. The prospective applicant was invited to participate in an initiation ceremony after a period of observation. The meeting confirmed the novice into the society after a recommendation from a current member, and the new Vor swore an oath of acceptance. Nicknames were formally selected during the process, and word of the coronation was transmitted to other members through informal methods. The name given to the Vor at the ceremony was unique from a common nickname, and it amounted to a new name for the Vor. As suggested by Likachev, the ritual shared a key feature with the induction into the Russian and Georgian Orthodox churches. To this day, when the priest is ordained, he is given an entirely new name, usually referring to a figure in the church who is considered to be a role model for the novice. Vory's bodies were covered in tattoos, with a star on the shoulders or knees indicating complete membership in the fraternity. They spoke their own language, which had a Russian grammatical framework but a separate lexicon. A Vor is the leader of a criminal gang that pledges to a creed shared by other leaders. He obtains his title through a standardized initiation ritual all over the crime gang, and he participates in mafia activities. During the Soviet era, the members were mostly imprisoned, but in post-Soviet times, they were involved in mafia operations. Yegor Filaretov, the first Vor to be crowned, according to Prime Crime records, was crowned in 1916. Around 1912, he became a member of a proto-Vory fraternity established in Moscow's Taganka prison. The organization mirrored the Vor V Zakone in that it was founded by pickpockets, but it quickly expanded to include other professional criminals and established a common fund controlled by a keeper who reported to the other members on how the money was spent. The new authority in Russia targeted criminals around the time of the revolution, and they were rapidly arrested and jailed. It's difficult to say how the code came to be, although it's likely that it came from guilds of professional criminals working in Tsarist Russia. The laws were most likely influenced by the Vory's experiences in Soviet camps and their close collaboration with priests, who were also considered enemies of the people. The code was developed in penal labor camps over a few years, the fraternity grew in power, and Vory's courts arose. Bitches, war. The second time when the fraternity was really threatened by the authorities' brutality was during the Bitches' War in the late 1940s and early 1950s. Many Soviet inmates were granted early parole on the condition that they join the army by 1941 when the German army's advance into Soviet territory appeared unstoppable. During the war, almost 1 million Gulag convicts joined the military forces, serving in special penal battalions. All of the Vory who fought for their nation throughout the war broke the law according to the code. Wearing uniforms and carrying weapons, two emblems of a jail warden's power, was their offense. They were labeled as traitors and expelled from the Brotherhood upon their return to the camps. As revenge, the turncoats' commanders established a new code that allowed convicts to work as prison trustees, headmen, and foremen, as well as other positions of authority inside the camp. Soviet prison authorities intended to utilize the Bitches' War to methodically execute specific convicts at the hands of their criminal comrades. By the end of the 1950s, law enforcement was persuaded that the Vory had all but vanished. Despite this, the state's anti-Vory actions have proven ineffective. The Vory managed to withstand the Soviet regime's rigorous persecution between the 1930s and 1950s. The fraternity had special gatherings in Moscow, 1947, Kazan, 1955, and Krasnodar, 1956. After Stalin died in 1953, the severe restrictions governing economic operations were relaxed, signaling the end of the totalitarian government. Because of the social and economic conditions, the fraternity was able to take advantage of possibilities outside of the prison walls and grow in number and strength. From the late 1950s through the late 1960s, the Vory slowly but gradually grew in number. In the years 1959 to 69, an average of 5 Vory joined each year, 13 in 1960 alone. In 1970, the number of Vory crowned began to climb dramatically, and it continued to rise until 1996, when 64 Vory were crowned. A significant decline then took place in 1997, when only 35 Vory were initiated. The Great Mob War. The Great Mob War was a series of massacres that swept Moscow and a few other large Russian towns during the years 1993 to 94. Gangsters had been fighting and murdering each other throughout the Gorbachev and Yeltsin years, but the slaughter unleashed in 1993 to 94 was unprecedented, according to Paul Klebnikov. This date has been largely accepted by academics and non-academic authors alike. Russia experienced a substantial transformation in the early 1990s. In 1991, the Soviet Union disintegrated, resulting in the formation of 15 internationally recognized sovereign entities. The administration of Boris Yeltsin initiated a massive privatization plan in Russia in 1992, using a voucher system. Corruption was rampant, and criminal possibilities plentiful. According to the Russian Ministry of Internal Affairs, MVD, there were around 3,000 organized crime organizations in Russia in 1993, with many of them giving or enforcing illegal protection on new, private enterprises. Naturally, the criminal underworld transformed as well. In addition to the old-style Vory, who had spent most of their lives in prison, unemployed athletes, especially boxers, soldiers who had fought in Afghanistan, and Chechen gangs, who had consistently refused to adopt the Vory's code and had made their presence felt in Moscow since at least 1987, were all competing for territories and markets. The years 1993 and 1994 were unquestionably perilous. According to the MVD, there were 250 contract killings in Russia in 1993, up from 100 in 1992. According to the same source, there were 500 contract killings by 1994. The number of homicides per 100,000 persons has significantly risen, from 9.8 in 1988 to 32.4 in 1994. In terms of murders, however, the years 1995 to 96 were not much better, respectively 30.6 and 26.5. The number of crimes reported was greater in 1995 than in 1994, while the average number of severe violent crimes per 100,000 persons was the same in 1995 and 1994. The Putin era. Vladimir Putin was elected president of Russia in May 2000. Chechen militants invaded the Republic of Dagestan in August 1999, while numerous devices exploded in Moscow residential buildings just before that, September 1999. For the foreseeable future, Russia was facing a terrorist danger, pushing the government to beef up security and become more of a police state. As Prime Minister and acting president, Putin directed the armed forces. In May 2000, he won the presidential elections on the back of a nationalist wave. The Putin era has seen a steady return to authoritarianism, as well as a decrease in free expression and a reduction in democracy. Putin has also prioritized the battle against organized crime, as seen by the President's approval of the Russian National Security Strategy, December 2015. Federal legislation targeting persons who hold a prominent position in a criminal group structure was adopted in 2009. Articles 35 and 210 of the Russian Criminal Code prohibit the creation, management, and membership in an organized crime gang, with sentences of up to 15 years in jail, 20 years in case of officials. The President created a new criminal offense in March 2019 that targets members of the criminal fraternity Vor V Zakone. According to official figures, the number of documented organized criminal offenses reduced five-fold between 2008 and 2017, from 30,700 to 6,055, although the number of economic crimes declined as well, from 18,300 to 4,315. The fall in documented crimes does not signify a decrease in Russian organized crimes activities, say Russian academics. Rather, it displays an improved ability to hide crimes, argue Sukharenko and Lesninsky, adding that elected institutions are also criminalized. Vory killings have also been on the decline during the Putin administration. The early 2000s were still dangerous, but by the end of the decade, the number of deaths had dropped to 1980s levels, and the number of deaths caused by authorities had been reduced to a bare minimum. It's probable that in the late 1990s, the relative powers of various criminal gangs were tested, and by the 2000s, the major fights had been waged. The boundaries of territories and marketplaces had been defined, and a balance had been achieved. In contrast to Mussolini's campaign, which was directed by Prefect Mori, Putin's war against organized crime has not resulted in a significant exodus of Vory from Russia.